Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum, dear friends. So, welcome to this fourth session of Quran for Teens. As you know, the purpose of these sessions is to basically inculcate in you fond love and appreciation of the Quranic text, and so that you enjoy reading the Quran whenever you pick it up. And generally, the texts which we select for reading and discussion are ones which hold very significant, very primary significance as far as religion is concerned. And today we're going to look at one of the stories which is mentioned in the Quran and which has a very important lesson for all of us. It teaches us what the significance of patience is in the role of our lives. And so therefore we're going to just start the text, the reading of the text and translation, and then come straight to the questions. So remember, the format that we generally adopt here is that we read a Quranic text and try to understand it more deeply. And in order to understand the text more deeply, some comprehension questions are put forth to you, so that you are able to delve deep into the text and just don't stop at a superficial reading. So just let me read the text for today. This text is taken from the 18th surah of the Quran, which is called Surah Al-Kahf, and the verses are from 65 to 82. And they, as I said, mention an incident that occurred between Moses and a person which we are going to study. And the person is generally called Khizr in our literature, in our hadith literature. So this story has become famous by the name of the Moses Khizr incident, or the Moses Khizr event. So I'll read out the text and then you will read out the translation. So it says, فَوَجَدَ عَبْدًا مِّنْ عِبَادِنَا آتَيْتُهُ رَحْمَةً مِّنْ عِنْدِنَا وَعَلَّمْنَاهُ مِن لَّدُنَّا عِلْمًا قال له موسى هل اتبعك على أن تعلمني مما علمت رشدا قال إنك لن تستطيع معي صبرا وكيف تصبر على ما لم تحط به خبرا قال ستجدني إن شاء الله صابرا ولا أعصي لك أمرا قال فإن اتبعتني فلا تسألني عن شيء حتى أحدث لك منه ذكرا فطلقا حتى إذا ركب في السفينة خرقها قال أخرقتها لتغرق أهلها لقد جئت شيء إمرا قال ألم أقل لك إنك لن تستطيع معي صبرا قال لا تؤاخذني بما نسيت ولا ترهقني من أمر عسرا فانطلقا حتى إذا لقي غلاما فقتله قال قتلت نفسا زكية بغير نفس لقد جئت شيئا نكرا قال ألم أقل لك إنك لن تستطيع معي صبرا قال إن سألتك عن شيء بعدها فلا تصاحبني قد بلغت من لدني عذرا فانطلقا حتى إذا أتيا أهل قرية استطعتما أهلها فأبوا أن يضيفوهما فوجد فيها جدارا يريد أن ينقض فأقامه قال لو شئت اتخذت عليه أجرا قال هذا فراق بيني وبينك سأنبئك بتأويل ما لم تستطيع عليه صبرا أما السفينة فكانت لمساكين يعملون في البحر فأردت أن أعيبها وكان وراءهم ملك يأخذ كل سفينة غصبا وأما الغلام فكان أبواه مؤمنين فخشينا أن يرهقهما طغيانا وكفرا فأردنا أن يبدلهما ربهما خيرا منه زكاة وأقرب رحمة وأما الجدار فكان لغلامين يتيمين في المدينة وكان تحته كنز لهما وكان أبوهما صالحا فأراد ربك أن يبلغ أشدهما ويستخرج كنزهما رحمة من ربك وما فعلته عن أمر ذلك تأويل ما لم تستطع عليه الصبر. So This is the Quranic text that we have before us for today, and don't worry if you've not understood it. Inshallah, one day you will. But for the moment, let's ask one of you to read part of its translation. So I'm going to ask Amira Iman. Amira Iman, can you read the first part of this translation that you have with you?
Okay. Assalamualaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
Moses requested him, Khidr, if you allow me, I shall be your companion on the condition that you teach me a little also from the knowledge given to you. He replied, you will not be able to be patient along with me, and how at all can you be patient at what is beyond your sphere of knowledge? Moses said, God willing, you will find me patient, and I shall not disobey you in any matter. Should I read ahead?
Yeah, please do.
He said, okay. He said, then if you have to accompany me, do not ask me about anything until I mention it to you myself. At last, both of them set off until when, at one place, they boarded a ship that person made a hole in it.
Yeah.
Moses said, you have made a hole in it that you may drown all the people of the ship. This is a very strange thing you have done. He said, did I not say to you that you will not be able to exercise patience along with me? Moses said, do not hold me accountable for what I forget, and please do not be very stern with me in my matter.
Okay, so I'll ask Hamza Khalid if you could read the rest. Let me ask Fatma Hussain.
Both set off until when they met a boy on the way, he killed that boy. Musa said, you have slain an innocent person even though he has not slain anyone. This is a very terrible thing that you have done. He said, did I not say to you that you will not be able to exercise patience along with me? Musa said, if after this I ask you something you may not keep me with you, you would have reached an excuse from me. At this, both journeyed ahead until when they reached the inhabitants of a city, they asked their people to provide food, but they refused their hospitality. Then they saw a wall that was about to fall, so he restored it. Musa said, if you wanted, you could have asked for some compensation for it. He replied, now this is parting of ways between you and me. I shall now tell you the reality behind the acts on which you have not been able to exercise patience.
Continue, please. Please continue.
In the case of the ship, it belonged to some poor people who would earn their living in the sea, so I intended to make it defective because there lived a king ahead who was snatching every ship. As for the boy, both his parents were people of faith, so we feared that after growing up he may not harass them because of his rebelliousness and disbelief. Hence we wanted that their Lord bless them with a child in his place who is purer and more affectionate than him. And the matter of the wall was that it belonged to two orphans of the city. Beneath it was their treasure, and their father was a pious person. It was he who had buried the treasure, so your Lord wanted that they reach maturity and take out their treasure themselves. This happened because of your God's grace, and all this that I did was not out of my own intention. This is the reality behind the acts on which you have not been able to show patience.
Thank you very much, Fatima. So, as you can see, that this is a slightly strange incident that we have read about, and we can see how that person called Khidr, he actually killed a boy, and then he actually in fact, he drilled a hole in one of the boats and made it defective, which of course is not very comprehensible. And then again, there was a place that he and Moses had traveled to, and there they were not properly dealt with. There was no hospitality shown to them, and so Moses was impatient on all these three instances. And on each of these occasions, in spite of having given his word that he'll not question Khidr for whatever he would do, Moses could not restrain himself. He was so shocked that he forgot that he had given his word that he'll not ask him anymore. But so shocked was he that he couldn't restrain himself, and on each of these occasions he actually just lost his composure. And after the first two incidents, the third incident, when it took place, you can see that just before it took place, actually, Khidr had asked Moses that if you do it for another time, because you always said that you would not question me, but you have been doing so, and I've been answering you on two occasions, and I've told you that you will not be able to exercise patience with me. But if you do it for a third time now, then it's parting of ways between you and me, and you go your way and I go my way, because then you have actually not kept your word. And Moses said, okay, fine. But lo and behold, once again, he could not contain himself, and when he actually restored the wall which was about to fall, once again Moses became impatient and said that, why did you do that when you could have actually asked for some semblance of hospitality from our hosts? So this is how things went, and on each of these three occasions, Moses was completely taken aback, and as I said, on each of these three occasions, in spite of giving his word, he could not restrain himself. And then you see in the next part, you've just read through it, that Khizr actually explains his his actions, which are seemingly incomprehensible. And these actions, as you can see, present some logic on the part of Khizr. And I'm not going to speak about that because it's very apparent, and in fact, it is going to be one of the questions. In fact, the very first question that I'd like you to answer, and taking a few minutes. But remember that this is a very fundamental story, or an event or an incident which is mentioned in the Quran, and it has been used and misused as well. The people have killed children for this reason, and they have given certain excuses that look what Khizr had done, and if there is some need to kill a child for a purpose, or for example, if someone kills elderly people for his own cause, and children die as a collateral damage for that. For example, as a suicide bomber, if he kills a lot of people and children die, and this collateral damage is something which has to be borne because it's done for a higher virtue or a higher objective. So, as I said, this is so important because of the fact that these incidents have been used, and similarly the rest too, but we'll do that explanation or discuss that as we go along. And so I'd like you, my dear friends, to just start, or as we do generally, one by one, I would like you to answer these questions. I'll give you a couple of minutes for the first one, and then inshallah we'll discuss. So the first question that you need to answer is that, what are the lessons that can be drawn from the three incidents which have been mentioned in these paragraphs, in which Moses and Khidr had this journey together? And what do you think is the moral of the story, as you can see? Because each of these three incidents have some explanation behind them. And so what are the lessons that you can draw? So please start thinking. If you want, you can make notes, or if you want, you can just make mental notes. And once you're through with the reading and going deep into this text, we'll start discussing. Okay, so the time begins now. If there is any difficulty that you find in the translation itself, you can just ask. Otherwise, as you can see, the text is absolutely clear. Just to repeat that this is Surah Al-Kahf, which is the 18th Surah of the Quran. And we have started off from verse 66 or 65 to 82. And it mentions the story of Moses and Khizr. So, yes, just think what comes up in your mind. Just see what is the wisdom which Moses was told or communicated by Khizr, and of course, in that wisdom or the reasoning that he offered lie the lessons that we need to learn. But you can perhaps pick out the fact that there is one basic lesson which can be even common to all these three incidents, and it does tell us that there is something that we need to understand regarding the scheme of God. And as for the title that you can see that we have given to this passage, is that Moses was being taught that virtue of patience, and he was made to undergo this training so that he could be taught patience. And do remember that he was being sent to the Israelites, who were a very, very so to speak, a naughty nation, and they would always question, and they would irritate the future. So they would be irritating him a lot, they would be harassing him and all those things. And so therefore, in order to instruct and train Moses for this all important job that he would be doing in future, this is the training that he was made to go through. I'll ask Nida first. Nida, what do you make out of this?
I think Moses ﷺ should have trusted the Khidr, because should have trusted that he knew what he was doing and had a reason to do what he did, and that he would eventually tell Moses.
No, but what about the lesson that can be? I mean, the lesson that you is it the lesson that you're pointing out, the one that he should have shown patience and trusted Khizr?
Yeah, he should have trusted.
But what about Khizr killings? I mean, the rest of them could have been swallowed or ignored, but what about the fact that he ended up killing a boy? So do you think that even in such a case in which a person kills someone, you take the life of someone, and
I
still...
think it's not necessarily that he killed someone, but I mean, it's who was doing it, right? It was because it was the Khidr. If it had been anyone else, and if it had been someone who was doing it for their own means, it wouldn't have been right. But because it was the Khidr and he was doing it because Allah had told him to, then because Allah was supposed to trust that Allah has a reason for doing everything.
And so, if Allah asks anyone to kill the children, I mean, anyone could be the person who could be entrusted with the task of killing. And if I were to observe someone killing, and I was even told that God had asked that person, I should have stayed quiet. Okay, let's ask Mira Iman.
So, from the three incidents, I think this phrase comes into mind that you shouldn't judge a book by its cover. So, all these incidents, even though they seemed pretty, they seemed really bad, or it seemed as if they shouldn't have been done.
Mm-hmm.
But they had something behind them that couldn't be known from behind. That if you just looked at it from in front, then you wouldn't be able to know what was happening at behind. What was the story behind all of the events that were happening? So at the starting, Khizr says, "You will not be able to be patient along with me, and how at all can you be patient at what is beyond your sphere of knowledge?"
Mm-hmm.
So basically, it's saying that you cannot be patient at at the unknown. You don't know what is the unknown, so how will you be patient? So, so whatever was happening behind was only either known to Moses Islam or to Khizr Islam, or the events why he did it. He knew why he was doing it, and Allah knew why he was doing it. But nobody else knew who was doing it because it was unknown.
So, what lessons would you draw from this? What is the lesson of the story?
The lesson I would say is that we shouldn't. Is that before we know the whole story, we shouldn't say that it's bad just at once.
Okay, so unless you know the complete picture, you just cannot comment on the partial picture. Is that what?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, thank you for that, Mira. And I'll ask Fatima and Reba. Fatima, what would you say?
So basically, I feel like the basic and the straightforward lesson in the story is to be patient. But the other lesson was that, that really came up to me was that everything is done by God's will,
Mm-hmm.
and it's done for our own benefit. So even if they have, even the bad things, they're done for our own good, for our own good outcome, for good outcome, for benefits.
So was this Fatima or Ariba?
It's Ariba.
Oh, Ariba, wonderful. Okay. So we'll come back to your comment, but as I have understood, you say that there are basically two lessons to be learned. One of them is that patience is the name of the game in all the humdrum of life, and the second thing is that you have to trust God that whatever happens it does happen for a reason, And although at the time it happens, you might not be very convinced, or you might not understand what's going on, but it is here that you need to trust God. So did I summarize your view properly?
Yes, that's all I said.
Okay, thank you, Ariba. Wonderful. Okay, I'll now ask. Okay, Fatima Hussain.
One of the lessons I think that's here is that when you're pious and God fearing and like a good Muslim, that Allah will look out for you. Like you would not understand like the.
So you would not understand many acts of God. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. I mean, like sometimes you don't understand, like when they happen, that you don't understand why God would do that, but later on you're like, yeah, this was for the best. Like it was a God looking out for me.
Okay. So that would be something very close to what we just heard from Ariba, that God looks out for you, and basically there is some wisdom that we are not able to comprehend at the time.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you for that. Okay, Josefa, please share your view.
I think patience is the main moral of the story, but I still think he shouldn't have killed the boy. He could have taught him not to do the things he did, like rebel against his parents, but I still think he shouldn't have killed him. Like that.
Wow, that's a very valid observation. So you think that he shouldn't have taken the life of the boy, because taking a life is something that you're not authorized.
Yes.
That's the point. Okay, wonderful. So we'll discuss these later on. At the moment we're just trying to find out how you think. So I'll ask Maria Iqbal.
I think it's important to be patient and wait a little while and then trust Allah's will, because you might not understand the reasonings behind an action at the scene, but you might understand later on.
So what about someone killing someone? As Josefa just said, even to the extent of the fact that someone kills someone, would he be justified for that?
No, I think then you should question.
So that should have been questioned, and therefore, if Moses became impatient, he was pretty much correct in his view that he became so annoyed or irritated. Okay, thank you. So I would now ask Meher Fatima.
I also believe that everyone should be patient and the reasoning will come out sooner or later. But killing is something that should have be questioned and have an alternative way to go about it.
Okay, so it's very similar to what Josefa and Fatima just said before you, that the other acts could have been tolerated, but as far as killing someone is concerned, that had to be questioned. Okay, so I'll ask Musa and Ramla.
The main purpose of these stories is for patients, but as for the individual stories, I think the last one is primarily about how you should treat orphans with kindness and should leave their inheritance for them and protect the inheritance until they're old enough to obtain it.
But how would that happen? Because you see, Moses never knew that this was being done for that purpose. Khizr just built that wall in order to protect the treasure which was hidden or buried beneath the wall. So you think that Moses should not have questioned here as well?
I think that's not the matter. The matter is he promised not to ask any questions, and he should have kept to that promise.
Okay, and even in the case of the killing of the boy?
I don't know, honestly.
Okay, that's a fair answer as well. Okay, Saim, we'll come back to these actually. We are just discussing all these options, and inshallah we'll have a discussion right after. So Saim, what do you think?
I think everything happens for a reason, and there's always like a main reason behind what's happening. So you should be patient. But if something wrong is happening, you should definitely question it, you could say, not just stay patient.
Okay. So it was not justified enough to remain patient, and a question should have been asked that why did Moses kill that boy? Because Khidr killed that boy, because you see, killing is something huge as compared to what the other two acts portray. Okay, thank you, Sana, for that. So, Sine, are you with us?
Yes, I think that along with patience, acknowledging that someone might have more knowledge than you, but that doesn't mean that you don't question them. So it was kind of inevitable that such a knowledgeable prophet like Prophet Musa also had these questions. I think that there's no way that he couldn't have questioned killing.
But what about the fact that he had given his word that he'll not question, and the fact that the real purpose in Moses, and every time that he spoke out, actually he was killing the purpose, because the patience that was meant to be instilled into him, he never got to that, and every time he saw something he became impatient. So in spite of the fact that the whole journey was to teach patience to him, would you think that actually it did not serve the purpose? I mean, patience was being taught to him, and the end result is that he never learned this patience.
Well, I'm not sure on a holistic approach, but personally, I think that patience can only last to a certain extent. Like, overall, you should be a calm and composed person, and you should think through things, but I don't think you can be patient when it comes to big things like killing.
Okay.
But I don't know.
So that is something you say that even if you had given the word, this is an exception, that when you see something so heinous as to kill someone, it's much natural for a human being, in spite of the fact that he had given his word. I mean, he was a prophet as well, so he should have questioned. Okay, that's a fair point.
So.
Yeah. Okay, Waji Tahir. Waji, would you like to share your view?
I think that everyone that we should not, as well as everyone, patience is the key, but we should not take our anger out on someone, like how that child was killed, and because God has a plan for all of us.
But you see, you remember what Moses had explained, Khizr had explained to Moses, that he killed the child because that child would have been a rebellious child for the parents, and he would have caused a lot of problem for the parents, because this is something that he knew as his foreknowledge, and therefore it was deemed that that person should be killed, and God gave him the parents a new child who would be very congenial to them. You see, Moses has been explained. I mean, Khizr has explained each of the three acts. So do you think it is justified to kill someone because what he said is that person would be a real problem for the parents when he grows up, and therefore he was killed in his childhood, and God planned that he gives a new child to those parents, so that that new child would not be bad or evil for the parents. Anyway, we'll come back to this. Thank you very much for that, Waji. Okay, Zirak, it's now your turn.
I think since Musa was a prophet, he should have exhibited patience, because it's like a destiny from Allah that he became prophet. So he should have shown some patience.
So even at the incident of that child killing?
Yes.
Okay, so you're firm in that. So, okay, Zoya, I would like your opinion now.
I think it's a little complicated because from Khizr's point of view, Allah has said, in the Quran and all of his teachings that killing is not allowed, but in certain cases, it is. And so if Khizr is devoted to Allah, then he's obviously gotten some form of permission or a reason to kill him without being punished in return. So he had a reason for the killing, and Musa as a prophet was sent to Khizr to learn something from him, right? So as a prophet, he's meant to set an example, but he's also human. So he was a lesson for him in patience, to learn that, I guess,
he spoke up because he thought it was wrong, but in return, because of that, he learned a lesson on what it means to be patient. Because if he hadn't questioned, maybe he'd see more examples of complete devotion, but since he did, he learned that there's a reason for everything and that you should just wait in order to hear why things were done.
Okay, so that's a very comprehensive answer, Zoya. Thank you for that. And you think that as a prophet, he should have shown patience and trusted Khizr, and also trusted God, that there is a grand scheme of things in which things don't appear as they are, and he should have waited for the explanation, if at all it was going to come from Khizr.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Would like to say something else in the wake of the discussion that has already taken place? Anyone would like to change his view or come to a new view is also welcome. Or anyone else who was left out, had some mic problems, anyone that would like to share something again? See, we're going to discuss all these things, but I mean, before we take up the discussion, I'd like you to attempt the two other questions as well before we have a discussion, because they are interrelated. So the second question is that, was it humanly possible for Moses to remain, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, to remain silent on the acts he witnessed from Khizr if the latter is implied to be a prophet? So the question is that Khizr was a prophet, for example, if we suppose, and Moses alayhi salam or sallallahu alaihi wasallam was also a prophet. So I mean, you find a prophet of God doing something which is against the Sharia of God, the law of God. For example, if Moses was a prophet and Khizr was also a prophet, so Moses was witnessing from Khizr an act which was explicitly against what all religions teach, that you should not take the life of any person. So, and then I'll add this third question to this as well, so that you can make a comprehensive statement and hopefully lead to us the answer as well. That can Khidr be someone else from a prophet? I mean, could he be someone even beyond a prophet, like for example an angel or some other spirit or anything else who was instructed to teach Moses? So I would combine question number 2 and 3, and although it has been partially touched upon by you, any one of you who would like to answer by letting us know that what in his or her opinion is regarding the status of Khizr. Would he be a prophet of God, or would it be more pertinent to understand that he is an angel of God? Okay, Zoya, I see your hand. You have an answer?
As far as I'm aware, I mean, Khidr was described as a messenger, and a lot of the times,
actually, that is not the case. So, what has been described in the Quran is Abdum min ibadina. He was a person from among other persons. He was a servant from other servants. So the word messenger is not in the Quran.
Oh, okay. I must have probably read an English translation. I mean, regardless, though, he's obviously Musa. He's been sent to learn from him by Allah, right? So that means he must have some sort of, like, Khidr must have some sort of commandment from Allah. And I think that if he's meant to be a servant of servants, then he's probably going to be human, which leads me to believe that he is some form of messenger of some kind to, like, deliver some message. In this case, in the story, we see that he's delivering this message of patience.
Okay.
But I also think that at least for, if it was possible for Moses to remain silent, I think, speaking, if he is a prophet, then he should trust that the lesson that Allah has obviously guided him to. But we also know that even the prophets were flawed people. They were not, always perfect. So I guess it's not humanly possible for him to remain silent, but it would be a show of devotion and complete trust in Allah for him to remain silent, if that makes sense.
Okay, so if I summarize what you said, you say that basically he would have been a messenger of God, he was deputed by God, and therefore, if he was deputed by God, he must be having some justification of doing whatever he was doing, even in the case of that killing. And so it's a question of, I mean, it's a hard one on Moses because he had given his word and he should have remained silent. But at the time, in spite of the fact that should have remained silent, the thing that he had witnessed was out of the ordinary, extraordinary, and it's but natural for a human being to cry out. So therefore, he might be justified, although it would have been better for him to trust God and be devoted. I mean, out of his devotion, remain silent. So is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you for that. Okay, Amira,
Yes. Before I start, can I ask a question?
sure.
That did Moses know that Khizr was a prophet or messenger?
You see, that is something that we have to. Moses knew perfectly. I mean, had Moses known that he was a prophet of God, he would never have maybe questioned, or maybe someone who was divinely appointed. He was just told by the Almighty that you have to travel to a certain land, and you'll find Abdum min Ibadina, means one of my servants, someone who is obedient to me, who is there for you. And the Almighty did not even disclose that he was being given a lesson in patience. All he was told was that he was being sent to someone for a certain purpose. So neither the person was actually disclosed nor the purpose was disclosed. This all happened on the spot for Moses. And he never knew that whether the person that he would be encountering would be a prophet or an angel or anyone else. And just to also clarify one thing which Zoya just mentioned, that remember in the Quran, even angels of God have been mentioned as ibad, which means servants. So the abd word is not just used for human beings, it's also used for angels. So it would be perfectly okay to assume, I mean, one of the options, and that's what for you to decide, that he could have been a messenger. That's perfectly okay if, as far as the word abd is concerned, and he could also have been an angel. The word again would be fine. The word abd would be fine for an angel because at other instances in the Quran, angels have also been addressed as abd or servants of God. So the thing that you have to decide is that would he be in this position, Khizr, be someone who is an angel of God or a messenger of God? Remember, messengers of God have limited access to God. God reveals partially to them whatever he wants to educate them on. But angels of God, they have unlimited access to a lot of things that God does, and in fact, the lives that we find taken away so often in front of us, it is the angels of God who take away these lives. And when a person dies, his soul is claimed by angels. So we have all this information in the Quran, and of course we have this information also that nothing against the law of God should be, I mean, we should be complacent about that. And even the small thing as making a hole in that ship, and Moses never knew that the person he had with him was a messenger or an angel. He just knew that he was a person. So questioning him that why did you have that hole drilled in that boat, because it belonged to some very poor people, and their living was dependent on this boat or ship. So this is how, I mean, I would like you to further reflect and see what comes into your mind. So I've just given you some more information, and so please go ahead now, Amira.
What I think is that the questions that Moses Salam asked, I think it showed that he wanted to know that why he knew that it was something that shouldn't be done in front of him. So it wasn't humanly possible for him to not ask the question, because it seemed like, for example, the person who was killed, the boy who was killed, it's not humanly possible not to ask why you killed him if nobody gives you a reason. So I don't think it was humanly possible for him to remain silent. But if he knew that he was sent by Allah, then I think he should have believed him. that it has some unknown reason behind it, or it had some reasoning behind it. So if he knew that he was a servant from God and he was doing it from God's wishes, then I think he should have believed him. He should have remained patient until the end, then when he would explain everything.
And what about the fact that could Khidr be believed to be someone else than a prophet of God? I mean, could he be an angel sent by God to instruct Moses in a lesson of patience?
I think it is possible that he would send an angel so that he could teach the prophet, because it was also done for Prophet Muhammad with Hazrat Jibreel alayhi salam. So it could be possible.
Right. And would this also not solve this glaring question, which all of us are uncomfortable, including myself, that because angels take the life of people every now and then at God's command. So, I mean, all of us die and angels come and claim our souls. So, if he is supposed to be an angel who has been instructed by the Almighty to teach Moses, and there are certain things that he is doing, it is as if it is not he who. Remember, I'll take your attention to the last part of our segment, of our excerpt. If you just read that last excerpt, it says, let me just read that out to you so that it might be becoming something more of a clarity. Look at the second last sentence of the excerpt. Amira, what does it say?
This happened because of your God's grace, and all this I did was not out of my own intention.
That's it. So what is being said here is that Khidr is saying that God had done something and I'm just executing orders on his behalf. It's not that I'm going to kill someone, I'm just following the orders of God. So if you, for example, suppose that perhaps Khidr was an angel meant to come to Moses to teach him a lesson in patience, because he was being sent to a very impatient nation as the Israelites, the Bani Israel, and of course it was humanly impossible for him to stay quiet, and this is because of the fact that he perhaps did not understand that he was an angel. Had he understood that an angel is doing something, and angels are deputed by God for all the things that happen in the world. I mean, they've drowned people, the things that we see, earthquakes they emerge, we have tsunamis and so many destructive forces. So basically these angels are carrying out the orders of God for some purpose. So one explanation could be that basically Khidr was an angel, and Moses actually could not make out this, that he's an angel. Perhaps had he made out that he was an angel, he might have questioned Moses, Khidr, because of the fact that angels do these things all the time. And however, in all probability, because Moses thought that he's not an angel and he's maybe someone like a prophet himself, and that made him impatient, because he thought that even a prophet is not authorized to take a life, because the Sharia which has been brought by the prophet, the law, the divine law itself says that you cannot kill someone for something which is going to happen in the future. Remember what he said? He said that boy is going to be rebellious when he grows up. So that would require a certain foreknowledge. And of course, we people, or even prophets of God, they are not given such foreknowledge in the normal sense. So I'm just trying to make sense of these things, and of course, as I said, that I'd like to hear more from you. So, Nida, you'd like to share something?
Yeah, this isn't very relevant to the question, but I've just been thinking about whether or not the killing was justified. And I think it could have been justified because of the fact that Allah knows all, right? And so Allah would have been able to see in the future whether or not this boy would have grown up to be a believer or not, like you said.
Mm-hmm.
And if in his lifetime he wasn't a believer, and in the end he would have, because death is not the worst thing that can happen to a person.
Mm-hmm.
After your death, whether you go to Jannat or not,
mm-hmm.
and if you end up in hell, for a Muslim, that is the worst thing that can happen.
Mm-hmm.
If you are a non-believer, then you will not go to Jannat. So either way, no matter when he would have died, eventually, because he was a non-believer, he wouldn't have ended up in Jannat. So the killing wasn't so much so to affect the boy, but his parents. because his parents were believers, and Allah Ta'ala wanted to save them the pain of having to have a son who was a non-believer and would have ended up in hell either way. But to help them, because they were believers, Allah Ta'ala decided to give them a child that would have become a believer.
So what do you think what is the status of Khizr? Would he be appropriately understood to be called a prophet of God, or should he be regarded as an angel of God?
I think he could have been either a prophet or an angel, but whatever he is someone who is represents God and is doing what is God's will. So as long as he acts as God's messenger, or as someone who is carrying out God's will, then we should trust in him, because we believe that God knows everything.
So you're saying that it's not much of a difference whether you believe him to be a prophet of God or an angel of God, because both have been given some extra knowledge on behalf of God, and they are doing something on behalf of God himself. And that could be a fair point, because you see, in the past, our written commentaries on the Qur'an, we find both these views existing. So there is one group of scholars who say that Khizr was a messenger of God. Another group of scholars who say that he is an angel of God. And personally, I feel that angel interpretation to be more relevant, because as you see, if you believe that he was an angel and he did certain things on behalf of God, like for example, killing a person could be something which is huge. And we find that even today, when some boy passes away in infancy, or a girl passes away in infancy, we say, okay, it's an act of God. And what we're actually saying, it's an act of God which is being carried out by an angel that we never saw. So you see, what we understand is that when life is taken away, because it has been taken away by God through an angel who has been sent to claim the soul, so we don't get irritated. Well, all we do is that we surrender to the will of God. But two things I would like to clarify here ahead, Nida, is that first, that whether all believers are going to end up in heaven and all disbelievers are going to end up in hell, as is generally understood, I do have certain concerns, but we'll not talk about them in this lesson, maybe inshallah in some future talks. But other than that, I think that another thing that is important is that when you see someone doing something which is done on behalf of God, and later on, as many of you have explained, I have you, Fatima and Ariba and Zoya and some of and Nida, you too, and you've said that and Amira also, that there are certain things that you just cannot question, or you should not question about God, because these things have some wisdom behind them which you don't understand at the moment. Thus, for example, the wisdom of the hole being drilled in that boat was that that boat was rendered as defective, and there was a person who was a pirate, or there was a king who was a pirate, who would snatch boats from people. And when he saw that this boat had a defect, he would not actually have confiscated that boat. As a result, it remained with those poor people. They could have repaired the hole and just gone on, as against losing the boat completely. So on the spot, you could have thought that something bad has happened. A hole has been drilled in your boat, and you have just been given something which is against justice. But if you know the larger picture, and if you had known that this was what was going on, then perhaps you would understand that something happens for a reason. Similarly, the case for the boy, and similarly the case for that wall which was being built. And the wall was being built to protect the treasure of two orphans who were not of age at that time. And it was meant that that wall would be built, and later on they would have that treasure. So you see, if you sum up, I can think that a very important lesson that we should draw is that when something bad happens to us, at times we have sickness, at times we have financial constraints, at times we are pushed in a direction, we make a wrong choice. But many a time when you look back, you actually say that, well, this happened very well, because I've been a complete failure, I would have gone the other way. So you see, the purpose here, or the lesson, the most important lesson to be drawn here from this story of Moses and Khidr is that whenever something happens to you in your life, in our life, which is not to our liking, don't lose hope, don't lose trust in God, because ultimately what is going to happen later on is going to tell you that what happened in the past was actually good for you. Either it was good because it made you a stronger person, you passed through a certain trial and became a strong person, you had those potential which were latent, and the crisis actually polished your personality and you became a better person, or at times you became closer to God because of certain trials. And similarly, many of the choices that you make and you regret. Let me narrate to you a very interesting incident which happened a couple of years ago. There was a flight, there was an air crash, in fact, in Islamabad, in Pakistan, and someone was to board that flight for a very huge business deal that he was going to notch up with some foreign company or that. And when he reached the airport, somehow he got stuck in traffic, and lo and behold, the gates of the aircraft had closed. And when he reached the airport, he said that I was stuck in traffic. I had no option. I set out from my house well before the time, and now I have to reach Islamabad. Otherwise, I'll lose that huge amount of deal on my side, and I'll lose a lot of people as well. But the airport authorities refused. They said that, well, rules are rules. The gate has been closed, and you just cannot climb. And he really raised a lot of hue and cry, and he gathered so many people, but to no avail. And within 1.5 hours, he heard the news that the plane had crashed. So imagine, at times God pushes you in the right direction, whereas right at the moment that thing is happening, because that person thought that he had lost millions and billions in rupees or in dollars, whatever, because he was not allowed to board that aircraft. And look what happened, that aircraft never made it to this destination. So in other words, God's plan was to save him from destruction, and his plan was to actually invite his destruction, and God saved him. So these are the things which I think this is the most important thing that we have to learn from the story of Moses, that things which apparently seem out of the ordinary, or they cause disappointment to you, or they make you frustrated, take them as a challenge, take them as a something in which you have to trust God, that things which are beyond your control, things that you are not doing yourself and someone else is doing them. For example, God is controlling everything and it's not in your authority to alter that. So you have to accept God's decision, because that decision is going to be ultimately, inshallah, hopefully good for you. So this is the most important lesson. But I can see Zirak, would you like to say something or add something?
So was this exercise perhaps a lesson in empathy for Musa? So was he being trained with the impatience of the Israelites?
Yes, absolutely. You see, patience and empathy were also, they were the core values that Khizr wanted to teach Moses sallallahu alaihi wasallam, because the larger purpose of Moses was that he was being sent to a very, very rebellious nation, the Israelites. He was a prophet to the Israelites, and this incident, it seems, was before he was commissioned as a prophet. So God wanted that patience to be instilled in him, because had he not that patience in him, he would not have been able to be a successful prophet for the Israelites, because they harassed him. They put all sorts of circumstantial problems for him that made him it was very difficult for him to navigate. In the desert of Sinai, when they were wandering, they said that they're not satisfied with one food. Please give us more food. Okay, if you want us to believe in God, ask God to show himself to us. Arinallah jaharatan. We would like to see God face to face. And if you read the history of the Israelites, you'll find that one demand after the other, one problem after the other, they were kept raising for Moses, and hence Moses was sent for this. But remember that this whole incident, as far as it was an instruction for Moses, it has tremendous lessons for all of us, and I just spelled them out. That never lose hope when something is happening out of the ordinary. Then it means that God has some other plans for you. Maybe you're not understanding them at the moment, but as time would pass, you would understand those issues. So anyone else would like to express anything regarding this? apart from the fact that this is the most important lesson that we have to learn, to show this patience and trust God. And remember, trust in God is always done, or should always be done, once you have done your part. I mean, this is no trust that you don't do your job and you start trusting God that something good will happen. No, so you have to do your part. You have to do what best you can and then leave the rest to God. Otherwise, the law of God is that He's not going to help us in any way if we are not doing our what we need to do on our part. Okay, so anyone would like to add to this, or maybe has a question, he's most welcome, or she's most welcome at now. Or otherwise, we're just going to go to the last part of our session, and that is a small quiz type of a thing, which, by the way, is meant to judge how patient you all are at the moment. And so, here is you have the quiz before you. These are 10 questions. I'll give you a small marking scheme at the end of these questions. So, you have about 5 minutes or 7 minutes to attempt this quiz. You have these 10 questions, and what you need to do is answer what, in all honesty, what you would have done in the situation that is described in each of these questions, and it will be a small estimation of the patience or lack of it that you have. So you can begin now. Just tick the right answer for your own self, and those of you who complete the quiz, as soon as they do, please raise your hand. There are some situations which you might not be in, but suppose had you been a parent or someone which is supposed in the question, what would you have done?
Can you repeat the question?
Which question?
So, you just said.
I said that there are some situations, for example, question number 3 or 4, which supposes that you are parents, or maybe you've got married. So of course you're not married and you're not parents yourself as yet. So in such questions, you imagine yourself to be there as the question supposes, and what would you have done if you were, for example, a husband or a wife or a father or a mother, because there are some questions who suppose that you are in that position. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to mark, I'm going to give you a scheme of marking that you need to mark yourself, and that's just a rough way to determine how patient you are, and later on we'll see how the total adds up. The total will be from 100, and for each question I'll give you a certain marking scheme that you need to tick. So question number 1, those who have ticked the first option should give them 10 marks. Those who have ticked the second option should give them a 0. Those who have ticked the third option should give them 10. Those who have ticked the fourth option should give themselves minus 10. And the fifth option has 8 marks. Okay? Question number 2. The first option has 10 marks, so those of you who have ticked the first should give them 10. Those who have ticked the second should give them a 0. Those who have ticked the third option should give themselves minus 5. And those who have ticked the fourth option should give them 8 marks. Those who have ticked the the fifth option, they should give themselves 7 marks. So this was for question number 2. Question number 3. The first option, those who have ticked the first option should have a 0. The second carries 10. The third has 8. The fourth, we had just 3 options in the question number 3. Okay, question number 4. Those who have ticked the first option should give them 10. The second has, the one who have ticked the second option should give them 7. Those who have ticked the third option should give them 4 marks. Question number 5. The ones who have ticked option 1 should give themselves 9 marks. Those who have ticked the second option should give themselves 9 marks. The third option, the persons who have ticked the third option should give themselves a 0. And the fourth option has 10 marks. Question number 6. Those ticked the first have 5. Those who have ticked the second have 10. Those who have ticked the third have a 0. And those who have ticked the fourth have a minus 5. Question number 7. Those who have ticked the first have a minus 5. Those who have ticked the second have a 10. Those who have ticked the third have a 0. Those who have ticked the fourth have 8 marks. Question number 8. Those who have ticked the first have 0. They should give themselves a 0. the second should give themselves 10, and those who have ticked the third should also give themselves 10. Question number 9. So those who have ticked the first should give themselves -5. Those who have ticked the second should give themselves a 0. The third should be ticked as 10. Those who have ticked the third as 10, the third option should give themselves a 10. Those who have ticked the fourth option should give themselves 7. Is okay. So now we move on to the last question. The last question, the first, those who have ticked the first should give themselves a 0. The second, the people who have ticked the second should give themselves 10. The third one ticked is 7, and those who have ticked the fourth option should give themselves an 8. In case there is any question that I need to repeat the marks, let me know. Otherwise, you just total your marks out. This will be from 100.
Thank you.
Okay, so just total up your marks. So just let me tell you this, and then maybe those who would like to disclose their marks is entirely up to them. But the scheme of this marking, the way it looks, how patient you are, it's not a very exact portrayal, but it gives you some idea about your own self, that how much patience do you have. So those who have scored between 60 and 70, they are good. They have to be placed in the good category. Those who have scored below 60, any marks below 60 would mean that you need to work upon yourself, and you need to understand where there's lack of patience in yourself. Okay, so those who have between 70 and 80, that's a very good category. So those who are between 80 and 90, that is called the excellent category. And those who have 90 and 100, marks between 90 and 100, that's exceptional. That is really exceptional. So anyone who's got to the exceptional category, it's just something that I wanted you to go through. And you see, one of the key things to succeed in life, you can learn from the story of Moses, is this patience, is this trust in God, in this complete discipline in your own self, in which you are at ease with what goes on outside of you. And it's not just a simple story that you have gone through today, dear friends, of Moses and Khizr. It is actually a lesson that we also need to learn. And all of you who have understood the story and also have gone through this quiz and fared very well should be proud of themselves. People who have scored less than 60, I would urge them to look at the questions maybe once again in their free time and see that why couldn't they score better, and maybe why in future, or how in future they can really build upon this virtue of patience. Because remember, as professionals, as human beings, as Muslims, as people of all sorts, the key to success in life, or I should say one of the keys to success in life, is this quality of patience. It'll win the hearts of people around you. It'll make you a leader. The leader inside of you you'll be a cherished person. People would look up to you, and you would have tremendous trust in God as well. So I have hats off to Amira and Meher and Zoya and Nida for scoring very high marks, which means that this is something that they need to maintain and maybe even look ahead. And the rest, of course, all of you have done very well, most of you. So make this an objective in life, that you are going to achieve this virtue of patience. And whenever something goes wrong in your life, this is the last thing I would like to say. Whenever something goes on in your life and you don't like it, always pick up the Quran and once again have recourse to the story of Khizr and Musa, and see how things went wrong, and how ultimately when the wisdom was told by God that this was the wisdom, that certain things were done, you will immediately become patient. So if people die young at times, do think that there must be some wisdom of God. If you lose money, do think there is some wisdom in God. If you have some sickness, do think that there's something behind it that I need to understand. So trusting God, being patient whenever you are faced with difficulty, whenever you're faced with any failure, is what we need to learn from this. So thank you very much. I do hope that you enjoyed this lesson, and inshallah we'll be back next week with another lesson in some other part of the Quran. So until then, it is Khuda Hafiz.